If you thought gangs were a terrifying thing to encounter in Night City, then, well, technically you would be right, but they are nothing compared to some of the criminal organizations that live within it. Some hide behind a mask of looking like a good little business, others feel like the mob are still running the city, and some even speak to one another through the use of tattoos. So in today's episode, utilizing the Night City 2045 sourcebook once again, we will be looking into every single criminal organization out there, what makes them unique, and what they get up to on a regular basis. These are the criminal organizations of Night City. We start our list with the organisation known as the Consortium, a group that is known all over Night City for being involved in the activities of gambling, sex work, extortion, smuggling, piracy, blackmail and theft. Run by their leader Valia, this organisation has multiple fronts that they own, as well as other hangouts which include the Amber Room, Naiad's Embrace, Destiny Bank in Night City's port, Agron's Box Lunches and Zirafa Micro Village in the Hayward Industrial Zone. In 2077 the Scavs are seen to be the result of the Russians moving into the city. They have a heavy Eastern European influence and are said to have links to the motherland. Well, in 2045, the Consortium are essentially Night City's version of the Russian mob. They are Night City's Bratva. Unlike many other of the organizations within this list, the Consortium aren't the biggest at smuggling and piracy, but they still engage with it. But most of their money is made through their illegal enterprises hidden behind the business fronts. They have one major thing that helps them with all of this, and that is a Russian nomad nation named the Vairi, who helped them with their smuggling, getting it past the Thalas nation, the nomad nation of pirates who watch the waterways. But this Russian nomad group are able to find their own routes around them and cross the Pacific with all of their goods. They also have very close links with the Russian Robotics Corporation, who specialize in drones and other construction mechs, known as Zirafa Technical Manufacturing, who base themselves within Vladivostok. This is seen thanks to the fact that they base themselves within their micro village. However, how far that relationship goes is completely unknown. It is just known that they work together at times. Rumors of this organization spread throughout all of Night City, specifically that they are one of the most ruthless and brutal organizations out there. Maybe this is due to them being Russian linked or due to their appearance of being heavily coated in tattoos. But the truth of the matter is, they are no more brutal than any of the other organizations on this list. Speaking of their image, the tattoos are an entire language to them, and it'll help you identify who they are thanks to this unique way of speaking to one another. Whether you'll understand it is probably unlikely. They are also known to carry neo-Soviet weapons, both melee and firearms, and it's said to be extremely rare for one of their members to not have chrome. Usually, these members will be fully kitted out with as much chrome as possible, with at least one application of muscle and bone lace. What makes them a terrifying organization is their method of getting their way and influencing individuals and jobs. When they set out on doing a job, for example, the Consortium will most often than not recruit specialists. This doesn't have to be a professional. Most often than not, they are just civilians who have a specific skill that they need, or it could just be that they have knowledge that helps them out in their overall mission. That said, approaching civilians will usually be met with them turning down this opportunity. So the Consortium makes it so no one can say no to them. With that, they will threaten them with violence. If that does not work on them, they will then capture their loved ones and threaten them. And if that still doesn't work, or they do not have anyone to capture, they will implant a bomb within this individual and basically say they have to do it or they'll detonate it. So at the end of the day, if you get approached by a bunch of heavily chromed up individuals with tattoos galore and neo-Soviet weapons, that must mean you have a skill or some knowledge that they need, and unfortunately for you, you'll have to say yes, or the Consortium will either harm you or your loved ones to get what they want. You do not want to upset these Russian gangsters. Another Eastern organisation coming out of Night City is the Eastern Tigers Triad, who do pretty much the same activities as the Consortium with the addition of drugs and counterfeiting. Under the leadership of Lu Zhou, the Tigers only have 3 fronts in the city, those being the Gilded Phoenix Arcade, Guns and Dolls, and the Jade Blossom Spa, all located within downtown Night City. The Tigers are actually the youngest of all of the criminal organizations of Night City, at least in the year of 2045 they are anyway. It is said that they arrived on the shores of America in the last few years, all thanks to Lu Zhou's leadership, and when getting to the city immediately set up their criminal endeavors and actually have found a gap that they immediately exploited. Once again, this was thanks to the charisma of Lu Zhou, who immediately went on to hire the expertise of local edge runners looking for gigs, and got to seek out all of the influential corporations in the city and steal their designs. With them recovered and handed to Lu, the Tigers would then go around producing these cheap copies and selling them at markets up and down the west coast. Counterfeit wasn't a new thing at all, many people had done it in the past, but the Tigers became the first criminal organization to make it a massive part of their identity, and because of that, cornered the entire market, and because of it, became one of the largest counterfeiting operations since before the Fourth Corporate War. Because of the nature of their work, as well as the fact that they only just got into the city, the Tigers do not really have any close friends or contacts within the city. But that said, they do have one very close contact who has a major influence over the Little China area of Night City, that being David Ling Po, who not only helped develop New Japantown, but also has the gang of the Gold Dragons in his pocket as a private security, making him almost untouchable. They also have the other criminal organization of the Weng, Fang, Tong as a friendly contact as well, so they aren't completely on their own. But with Ling Po and the Tong in their good books, the Tigers still don't deem them worthy of being big players within their own organization. This is because the Tigers see Ling Po and the Tong as being too decrepit and too westernized to work in their modern criminal world. So are the Tigers dangerous as an organization? Well, I think it's safe to say that they are willing to do anything to make sure they get their way, but when it comes to attacking or defending themselves, the Tigers arm themselves with weapons that have an insane rate of fire, so most likely SMGs or heavily modified weapons, so they can not only kill a target quickly, but absolutely make a mess of their body as well. But on top of that, they are also trained in martial arts. It's not the highest of quality of martial arts, and probably wouldn't be their primary way of attacking or defending, but it's good to know if their weapons are unavailable at the time. So how do you identify these individuals? Well, that's the tough part. Unfortunately, it is very difficult as they wear extremely subtle numbers that have been embroidered into their clothes. So it is possible to spot them, but they are very subtle individuals. So if you're ever running a gig in Night City and your extremely expensive weapon keeps clogging up and breaking, well, you've probably been sold a cheap copy made by the Eastern Tigers Triad. El Norte Cartel are also an organization that dips their toes into the world of counterfeiting, as well as drugs, smuggling, extortion, theft, and most significantly, identity theft. Led by their leader Ruben Meza, the El Norte Cartel base themselves out within the Santo Domingo district of Night City, fronting places such as the H4 Clinic in Mega Building H4, Haywood Community Bank, Northern Light Supplies, Salon de Valentino, as well as the Maquiladoras in Rancho Coronado. Unlike the other two organizations, these guys can be identified pretty quickly as they all wear orange bandanas, not necessarily on their heads, but on their persons at all times, also having tons of tattoos of weapons on their bodies that usually consist of pistols and knives. El Norte Cartel were one of the first Mexican cartels to really break into Night City. Before them, it was extremely difficult for any of them to make a mark in the Neon Metropolis or further north into North America. This was ultimately because the nomads kept all of the trade routes on lockdown, and the other criminal organizations made sure that competition was hard, not really allowing anyone else to be a part of their world, and those things combined meant it was almost impossible to get a foothold in the world of crime in this part of the country. However, the cartel got their break thanks to a corporate-backed shipping venture in the Panama Canal, which opened itself to become bribable. Grabbing this opportunity by the horns, the El Norte Cartel sent their representatives as well as their funds to Night City to expand their operations, probably to the annoyment of the other organizations. That said, the cartels aren't exactly quick and immediate with their business. Instead, they like to bide their time in Night City, waiting to see which money-making scheme will be the one that will work best for them. Because of that, they have dipped their toes into multiple ventures within the city, things like small pilot programs to test out the viability of drug dealing, and all of the other things mentioned at the beginning. The cartel also had a major investment in getting their own way in the city, and poured tons of their finances into the backing of Teresa Valentino's campaign for city manager, going against the Aldecado's back candidate. That said, their alliance didn't really go the way that they hoped, because it seems like those living within Night City itself seem to be more loyal to Valentino and her cause rather than to the bosses of the organization back at home. Whilst it does seem this organization is heavily invested in the community they live within, they are extremely protective of their businesses as a whole and will attack anyone who threatens them, utilizing the cartel enforcers to do the dirty work, enforcers who like to use heavier weapons that are capable of auto-fire. Not only that, but the organization has a big focus on kitting themselves out with accuracy enhancing implants, so if you do wrong them, they will probably be able to take you out pretty quickly thanks to their incredible accuracy. But also, why would you want to take on the cartel? That's just an immediate death sentence. Another eastern gang located in Night City is the Kanzaki family, who originated from the Yakuza. The Yakuza of Night City never really did well from the Fourth Corporate War. I mean, all of Japantown was completely destroyed, which was their main power base, and with Arasaka being blamed for the attack on the city center, a lot of the Yakuza's allied trade routes were fully closed. Not only that, but one of their most influential clan members, Ichigo Kanzaki, got blown up by the nuclear blast whilst he was sitting in his penthouse apartment. Luckily, his children continued the bloodline and were put in charge of rebuilding what they had lost thanks to the war. Shin and Yasumi struggled a lot in this position, however, especially with the formation of the Night City Co-Prosperity Sphere, putting all of its focus into the Tiger Claws as well. Because the Tiger Claws were now ultimately in charge of this whole area, the Kanzaki family lost all influence in old Japantown and Kabuki and instead were forced to focus on a new area, that being Watson. One of their main locations of future build works was the result of Shin and Yasumi investing pretty much all of their funds into it in the 2030s. Before them, it was just a struggling construction company, but they wanted to buy it out and run it for themselves. This went extremely well, and now running this business, they started expanding it extremely fast, intimidating other corporations and businesses, doing backroom deals, bribery, and many other things, and all because of it, Buildworks grew into one of the biggest construction operations in the city and were responsible for the building of Mega Building H11. Now holding a ton of power within this part of Night City, the Kanzaki started to spread even further, with their ultimate plan to nibble away at Tiger Claw's territory and take it for themselves. This means that at the end of the day, the Kanzaki are a fierce presence within the city and will do anything to get their power back. Kanzaki enforcers are the ones who deal the major blows, as they are trained as brawlers who adopt martial arts training. Not only that, but heavy melee weapons are used amongst all of their ranks, and modified concealable firearms and cyberware are used as well to make sure they can surprise their enemies whenever they need to make a mark on the city. And you will see them coming as well, as they look like your traditional Yakuza member, kitted out in luxury tuxedos, looking like extremely wealthy businessmen. Ultimately, the Yakuza are back, just under a different name of the Kanzaki family. Also involved in the construction side of Night City is the organization of the Skiv family. Back in the 2010s, the mob and the mafia ran the whole of this city thanks to them buying out the construction companies and manipulating everything around them. However, eventually the corporations wanted the city back and hit them insanely hard, pushing the mob out once and for all. After the Fourth Corporate War, the Mafia tried desperately to go back to their peak days during the 2010s and even the early 2020s, doing what they did best, which involved tons of crime, graft, and of course lots of corruption. However, for some reason, it just never worked now. They just couldn't seem to find what made them so great during that time. It was most likely due to the fact that post-war was a completely new world. A lot of corporations had collapsed, governments had also been completely overhauled, and trade links that once existed were not the same anymore, meaning that for the Skiv family, they had to find a new way to do business and adapt to their new life. Led by their leader Lynn Skiv, they were pretty well versed in the old world and liked to study history, specifically 20th century mob tactics, and tried to bring those into their new operation. This included things like owning docks, owning the labor as well as the construction, so that they could technically be seen as legitimate. With that goal in mind, Lin invested all of the family's money into rebuilding its construction firm that had been abandoned that was called HF&S Construction, as well as setting up another business that they would name SK Securities. But Lin did something that was so totally new to the mafia of old and new, something that might not have gone down well with many of the iconic mafia bosses of old, but she knew it was the only way they could really survive in this new world. Here, she got close and personal with the corporations, and not just one corporation, but several all across the city, helping her get more money for their ventures, as well as the full backing of them to build up her family's new businesses, which included the development of the Haywood docks, which she would turn into a nomadless alternative to the port of Night City. This now means that the mafia are technically back in full force in Night City, but the most terrifying thing about them is they are also heavily supported by the corporations as well, and if you were to mess with them, Skiv enforcers would be sent out, individuals who had learnt how to fight on the streets and are incredible brawlers. They would also use heavy pistols, and those at the top of the enforcers would use assault rifles to create that old school image of the mafia of the 20th century. How can you tell who is a member of the Skiv family? Well, as you can imagine, they probably look like your typical mafia family of old, but a big giveaway is their secret handshakes and code phrases, and unfortunately what that is unknown. I guess if you know, you know. So don't mess with this new mafia family of the Skivs, or you might face the clamps of their enforcers.
Ah! They're coming straight toward our proximity. Maybe you should give them the clamps,
Gee, you think? You think that maybe I should use these clamps that I use every day at every opportunity? You're a freaking genius, you idiot!
And finally, to end the list, we have the Weng, Fang, Tong. The Weng, Fang, Tong were mentioned earlier as being a friend or acquaintance of the Eastern Tigers Triad, as well as David Ling Po. The truth is that David is in fact the organization's leader, and they have a focus on your traditional criminal organization things, including sex work, smuggling, extortion, theft, gambling, and embezzlement. It is said by many people of Night City that the Weng, Fang, Tong, or simply the Tong, are the most powerful criminal operation in all of Night City, mainly because David Ling Po owns and controls all of Little China, which includes an extremely successful import-export business, the Gold Dragons, as mentioned before, as well as their own operations which span multiple fields. Their businesses can be almost everywhere in almost every club. If it has sex workers or gambling in it, especially if it's in Little China, it's more often than not owned by the Tong, and you can spot it by its individuals. If they are communicating through secret hand signals, then it's probably a Tong member. But again, how would you know what those hand signals are? People also whisper on the streets about David Ling Po, stating that he is such a powerful and influential individual that almost everyone who has some importance within Night City owes him a major favor, meaning that he could probably get away with anything that he wants. That said, it isn't all great for the Tong. That is simply because David seems to have too big a focus on being city manager for Little China and has somewhat forgotten about them. This has meant that the Tong are actually having difficulty with their finances and struggling to adapt to the way the city is changing, especially the criminal landscape of it. Despite being in favor with the Tigers, they are slowly chipping away at the Tong's territory as they are desperate to show David how powerful they can be and to also show him what a true Chinese syndicate looks like. As well as that, the Skiv family are also gaining more and more power in their part of the city, taking a page out of David's book and seizing the whole of the city district that they inhabit, with some believing they are actually doing a better, more organized job than he ever did. But not only that, the gangs are also making a mockery of the Tong, with the Tiger Claws, Maelstrom, and even the Deadwoods running operations within Tong's territory, but despite that they've never faced any consequences, making them look incredibly weak and easy to walk over. It's becoming clear to many that David Ling Po is getting old as well, and it's only a matter of time before he and his organization of the Tong falls, and when it does, it'll bring about a new era for Little China, and it's looking like it will be a war between the Tigers and the Tiger Claws to see who will take over overall power. But with that said, they are still deadly even if the Tong are on the way out. Like many of the other organizations, the enforcers will do all of the dirty work, but each one of them is said to be extremely individualistic. unique and are seen to be oddly quirky a lot of the time. This means they all carry and equip different things that fit their character. Some are heavily chromed up in cyberware that has completely overhauled their bodies, whereas others focus on using arc throwers and tasers, and some even use acid and drug-based weapons. The Tong might seem like they are pretty weak now that they are letting gangs rule the streets and operate under their supposed law and order, but that's not to say they won't pack a mean punch if you do mess about in one of their businesses. But with that said, that's all of the crime organizations of Night City in 2045. Who knows how many there are within 2077? At the end of the day, these organizations aren't as obvious as the gangs. They hide behind businesses, do corrupt deals with politicians and corporations, and work within the shadows. Maybe there are so many more out there now in the world, and maybe there will be some that we get to witness at a later date. But for now, these have been the crime organizations that we know of, from the Consortium all the way to David Ling Poe's Weng, Fang, Tong. I want to say a huge thank you for watching this video once again. All of the lore from it came from the new Night City 2045 sourcebook, as I have mentioned many times before, and if you do want to get it, all the information is in my description below. I have so much more to cover from it, as it has so much new information about how the city works in general, and I have a 2045 playlist if you want to check all the lore from it below. A big thanks to my patrons for supporting me as well, including my small fishes, my big fish Anthony Bonfiglio, my YouTube channel Wise One, Sith Lord 906, Video Game Player 7555, The Nanotarium, and Amanda Berlin, my sharks Dan F, Lorena R, and Hazy Thoughts, and my Megalodons Sinus. But with that said, a big thank you for watching again, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.